session as usual for you to review the session and the people that's taking a little bit longer to log in. So this week, I really like to see you guys experiment with arts-based research because it seems that I see a lot of enthusiasm and things of digging deeper into the methodology. And actually, this is one of the cutting edge tools that people is including in studies because it allows you to go a little bit deeper into people's experiences, people's knowledges, or also eliciting in an engaging way research that usually is not that engaging. Like if you have metrics from geolocalization or GIS, like using maps for example, architecture or other things. I saw really good work of one of your classmates talking about that. And also lots of good reflections, and some of you have feedback about things you need to correct. So feel free to use that feedback to perfect that, because all of these little things we're doing, we're going to start compiling a protocol, which is going to be your last project for getting the final grade of this course. Okay. So if you get any feedback from this point on of these last two submissions up to the next submissions, make those amendments because that's going to be part of your final project. Okay. So any questions about that? Like, do you have any questions about arts-based research? Was anything you read that was like ringing a bell for you and you're not sure, that you need some clarification? How that went for you? Is it clear? It seems like the assignments were pretty straightforward. So just in case if anything comes into your mind, you can write it in the chat what I lecture you. So today we're going to explore two things. We're going to go in depth into the ethics of qualitative research. And please go to your Google Classroom and you will be able to observe a couple things regarding your project. So let me okay. So after this class, you will have a couple materials to review, but also we're gonna think about, you're gonna have two assignments this week, which is gonna be also work for next week, because next week we don't have class, but you have to deliver your assignment. So we're gonna talk about informed consent, and we're going to talk about researcher reflexibility into these tools in qualitative research, and also about the ethical issues in qualitative research. We already talked about the Tuskegee history and why IRB processes are very important. However, it is very important to also understand and put in practice what it means to be ethical when you collect your data, right? Because you can like make all these wonderful reflections about like how my research has to be useful to solving a problem for society or all these things, but how you actually, when you collect the data, don't infringe any laws or any situations that can put in vulnerable state to your participants. So first question for you to open this class discussion. Have you ever seen any study, any research? You don't need to say like, oh, my professor of like undergrad or something like that. But have you seen any kind of research that you have some doubts about, or you are pretty sure that were unethical in the way it was carried? It could be from a movie, it could be from the news, it could be from your own personal experiences. think about unethical practices regarding working with participants? Okay, Goose.
Well, hello. um, when we were getting the vaccine about the COVID, here, only here in Latin
Mhm.
America, it was tested also the influenza vaccine.
Mhm.
Some people would agree with that vaccine too, in
Mhm.
order to get um, in what we call in Spanish, dos pájaros de un tiro.
Uh-huh. Two birds
And
with one bullet. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
so they will get that. But later, it was this like uh, article talking
Mhm.
about the two vaccines acting together and what their consequences.
Mhm.
So we were like a testing group
Right.
for yeah. So well, I don't know if people were like totally um, was I mean if they knew about this practice, but it was carried here.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one example. Pretty much like the Tuskegee, because I don't know if you have seen the news that AstraZeneca vaccine is causing blood clots, like in many people after getting so many shots. Um, People have developed with AstraZeneca vaccine um, thrombosis, like thrombosis, and many aneurysms, aneurismas, and blood clots, which is um, when you get any kind of blood into your system and it goes straight to your brain, or your circulation starts, or especially in women that are also taking birth control pills. So that's proven by science, and AstraZeneca has committed to not produce the COVID vaccine anymore. So that's news. Guess what? Guess who has three AstraZeneca vaccines on it? We faculty from the University of Cuenca. And many of us have like heart issues after the vaccine, plus getting COVID. Many of us, many develop tinnitus, like which is that ringing in your ears, because of the vaccine plus COVID-19. So it is true, like that situation, gas is very real. However, nobody's taking accountability about that. So that's kind of dangerous. Any other examples you guys know about something maybe that will look a little bit sketchy in research, or that you think it's unethical in the way it was carried? So this, for example, is an example when you are exposing to high risk to people and not letting them know. So what was the alibi in this situation? Pretty much saying things like, well, from COVID you can die if you don't have a vaccine, but with us you will only get a blood clot. So in medical terms, still, for example, women's health, it's like that. Like women are the large population of the world who has not been properly researched, like women's health. So for example, everywhere in the world, if a woman starts like hurting around hands or chest, it's like, oh, like you are overstressing, but it's actually a heart attack. So some women don't know they're having heart attacks with the specific pains that only we women get, that men don't get. And it is largely complified. So for example, ovario polykystico, or PCOS, is one of the conditions that still in the modern age, people don't know why it happens. It's largely common in many cases, but nobody has a cure for it. So it is one of those cases when minorities are like fairly less studied and don't have solutions for. So pretty much women every day, and for the guys here present and the women here, like some medications for birth control, for example, have been proven that expose you to high blood pressure and blood clots that might cause a heart attack. But you sign up for it because there's no other way of higher protection birth control. So whenever you become older, you can have a heart attack for your birth control pills, and there's nothing to do with it. So that's kind of the balance is very similar to the vaccine. So yeah, that's one example. So after this discussion, you guys will be able to see this in a couple minutes, and I'm gonna show you here pretty much look, what is an informed consent form? So this is the practice of everything we have been talking from the beginning. So making all these reflections after how I benefit the population, how I make them engage in a way that I don't abuse their time, but also compensate their time, their effort to be part of my research. And IRB will always ask you to write a protocol. It doesn't matter if it's just a survey or it's just an interview about, I don't know, how good meat analogs can taste in your diet, even if you're not collecting samples from people or not talking about sensitive topics, you will need an IRB form. So the IRB process, as you could see, it's a group of university, it's a department in a university. We have one in Cuenca, University of Cuenca, that's called COBIAS, o Comités de Bioética en español. And international universities is pretty much the Institutional Review Board, which is composed by researchers, and they will revise what you're gonna do. Each time you need to be in contact to a human being of any age, just merely for asking them things like, what's your favorite soda flavor? That's already being in contact with a human being. Or even deeper, if you're going to collect a sample from their blood or things like that, right? So for example, you will write a protocol according to what we saw in the first weeks, but also this is very specific. So I'm going to show you an informed consent form of a study that I'm conducting this summer. And it's pretty much, let me pitch you in about the study. So as you guys know, and probably many of you who are like involved in environmental sciences and things, what's the issue with meat and environmental sustainability? Do you know? Eating meat. Is it sustainable? Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that the emissions of CO2 are the the cattle industry is responsible for the most part of the CO2 emissions of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Right. Right. Great. One of the things. So going back a little bit in the questions. So Angie says, like, I have heard that trans community some time ago in Cuenca didn't want to participate in studies because they felt like researchers only wanted the material info, but they didn't really go do anything to change the reality what that needed attention when it comes to work and health discrimination. That's true. Yeah, like we researchers can be pretty destructive and unethical. So always like, and also the tradition of how many people, including ourselves as faculty, I'm not like greenwashing my colleagues at any time with what I'm gonna say, but the way we learn research in PhD programs is not the same. So for example, many universities, even they have like big name universities, they never train high rank researchers to be humane. in these nice ways. So it's pretty much how you will convince them to let information go, but they won't think about this. Instead, the new wave of people, especially in social sciences and health sciences, now we understand it's not only what you want to publish a Q1 Scopus paper about, you really want to think about how your research is going to benefit people that's going to participate with you and people that will learn through your research. So it is true, Angie. Like I agree totally with you. Still, there's many researchers in our community and worldwide, not only Cuenca or Ecuador, that they only think about publishing their papers, extracting their knowledge, and leaving people as same or even worse because they have to recall trauma or anything like that. So like it takes tons of water and land to make it possible. Yes. So long story short, there are not enough cows for all of us in this planet. Like, no, there are not enough cows to eat meat. It takes lots of water. It takes every time you kill a cow or cattle of any kind, there's a lot of emissions, as Gustavo said. So my research project is pretty much about a technique called extrusion. So I'm not a food scientist, but my colleagues are food scientists, and say like, hey, we have discovered and we have copyrighted a technique called extrusion, which is creating patties like like Beyond Burger patties or like similar meat analogs that are based on quinoa or beans or lentils, like any plant-based thing, they turn into a paste that looks like meat or feels like fiber meat. So it's like a technique of a machine. And they pretty much now it's fairly new. It is different than Beyond Meat. I don't know if you guys have eaten like any of these burgers, vegan burgers or carbe, which is like the typical protein, plant-based protein. But right now there's many products like even sausages or things like that in the market, like are based like on broccoli or other vegetables, but they're like developed in a way that feels like meat. However, the industry and people is still not trained enough to learn about this. So research is about having a group of students in California learning about exclusion, but at the same time learning what implies as part of the industry to create exclusion products. So how affordable it is, the implications for marketing, and also for community engagement. Because what happens with plant-based meats? Have you had any experiences at your household with your parents, with your mom, with yourselves, probably if you live alone, trying these plant-based meats? Have you ever tried like a lentil burger or like a Beyond Beef burger or any of those products?
Well, I'm I perceive myself as an enthusiastic in um all the food things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I love to cook, so I have learned a lot of analog meat analogs. I'm not vegan, but I like to experiment with that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the most frequent and more one of the most curious meat analogs is mushrooms
Mm-hmm.
and any other of that kind of family of fungus.
Mm-hmm.
There is a mushroom called melena de leon. I forgot how to say it like in English, but
What's the name?
melena de leon. It's a mushroom that it's making by tiny uh,
Oh,
tears.
lion's
Um,
mane. Lion's
yeah,
mane. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's right. Yeah, and that fungus, well, when you keep like a marinade in any other sauces and leave it overnight, the next day cooking it, it feels really similar to meat. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and even it tastes like meat, and yeah, kind of that thing. And yeah, I'm an enthusiastic in that all kind of cooking, and I think it's interesting to take all
Right.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like plus eating animal, like there's health research that says like if you eat too much like meat, like you can get gota, like the typical illness. But also when you get older like me and your blood pressure starts spiking when you're stressed or you're under too much work, doctor will say like, hey, you have to get out of animal proteins. And was like, what the hell I'm gonna get my proteins off because my body needs them, right? So you cannot become a cow and like eat all the lettuces in the world because you also need other resources to have energy, right? So there's many things, for example, that in my case, for example, I have high blood pressure. I have a chronic illness before, and I cannot eat too much meat. I cannot eat pork anymore. So what's my chances, right? So the chances in the market here and in States surprisingly are the same, which is Impossible Burger and Beyond Meat. However, those are very expensive. So if you're like middle upper class, it's okay for you. But if you have a family and you want to shift for plant-based meats, it will be more expensive than meat actually, because there's no competitions in the international markets. So what we're trying to do with our research is pretty much show young food scientists how to produce this from many ways, so it becomes more affordable for everybody. And actually, there's many ways, for example, using cauliflower in the same way that Caro was talking about lion's mane, that you can turn them into like a T-bone steak. And I have done it myself for this product process. So I can send you the recipe whenever you want to. It's how you will make like a very gourmet dish with cauliflower. And from one cauliflower, you can get like 5 steaks in the way this is processed. And it's very cheap and very affordable and very delicious as well. So it's only the way how you marinate it too. So specifically in this research that I pitch you in, so this is our consent form. So what we want to do with our student researchers is make a study with Latino communities in California. We want to explore how open are they, because like younger people or people that has a chronic illness will probably say like, I don't have a choice. I have to buy these products or I will have high blood pressure. But ideally, it would be like people like Carolina ones that tries new things or maybe healthier ways for yourself or things like that, right? But elder millennials and baby boomers won't do tacos with Beyond Meat because they know it's not meat, like they're harder audiences. So what we're thinking about is exploring that people has tried what they think about the taste, what they think about the affordability of the product, what they think about the health benefits, because it actually has health benefits that most of people don't know, right? And it's lack of knowledge. Like before my doctor told me, like you can eat cauliflower in the same way and it will substitute if you put other things in the plate, the quantity of protein if you combine these like with beans or things like that, right? So I didn't knew. Many people don't know. So for example, this is the draft of a consent form. So what you need to do in a document, and you will have this document on the Google Classroom later, it is pretty much, first you have to put a header of the institution you are affiliated with as a researcher or either way as a student. So doesn't matter when you're doing your research at the University of Cuenca, a master's degree, or any other university, you will need to put the logo because this form is gonna be for your participants to sign, and you are gonna sign up. So this is like a contract of participation when they agree upon the terms of research, but also you deline everything ethically that will happen, and there's no biases and hidden information in this. So IRB will ask you for this document. So for example, a first paragraph has to be an introduction. So you are being asked to participate in a study with Dr. Belal Hassan, which is the PI, and Dr. Denise Vasquez Guevara, co-principal investigators. So in research groups, you have, research groups have a director, which is the PI or principal investigator, and there's the co-PIs and the student researchers or investigators or other people that's involved as a research assistant or things like that. So it's a whole team working. And the process of this product is to explore this. So you will say like, hey, this is our name, this is our project, and we want to explore this. And you will name the criteria. So for example, in the case of the studies about depression, for example, you will have to say, I want to know, like, my name is XXX, and the title of my study is this. What I'm aiming to know is why people don't seek psychological help when they are depressed and they need this support, right? And then it comes the processes of research, like what the person can expect by logging on and working on with us. So we'll say like, if you join this project, you will be our participant and will help us reach this goal. But you also will need to do this. So for example, participate in 1 hour Zoom session of participatory workshop that will be in person or will be on Zoom. And we will set the day with a voting poll for everybody to participate in that specific day. And we will decide. You will be asked to respond questions about this. So you can like brief them in about some questions anonymously or using Mentimeter.com. And I'm going to show you today how to use Mentimeter. And you will need to participate in the discussion. So you will be asked questions. You will have to use a platform, but you will also have to say what you think about the specific things. And the workshops will happen between these dates. Anytime between those dates. So you have to be clear when, what you're asking them, when is that going to happen, or at least a range of time if you haven't said it. And also, what kind of information are you looking for them? So people can have an idea, right? Oh, I'm going to talk about meat and plant-based things, which I probably hate, but I have an opinion, so I can participate. Or I haven't even tried these things. So is it good for me to participate or not, right? And then you will state things about risks. So for example, as we're just gonna ask them, we're not gonna make them taste anything. We're not gonna make them cook anything for us. It is a low risk. So there's always levels of risk in terms of studies. So high risk is when a person is talking about something very sensitive, when they are talking that in a group with other strangers and they possibly can be identified, or people in the group won't respect the confidentiality of the space, or if there are chronic illness patients and they are required to take medication or take samples out of them, all of that has a higher risk in the study. Or for example, in the case of like industry, saying, I'm going to observe technicians of a factory and ask them about if they have accidents in the workplace and show us the wounds or things like that. That already has a higher risk because you're talking about a topic that might be sensitive, but that also makes people vulnerable in a specific ways. Do you have any questions until then? This part. No?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. So here is this other paragraph when you will pretty much will state how the information is going to be stored. So one of the things that IRB always asks, if doesn't matter if it's not life-changing information, they ask you not to link the responses with the identity of the person. So this means when you transcribe interviews, it cannot say Carolina dos puntos said this, right? Like you will have to say female participant of 24 years old of Cuenca said da 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 da, or assign her a nickname. Why? It's because the protocols of the Belmont report and all the information you guys saw earlier, we just want to make sure the identity of people is not linked to their responses at all times to in case the data is stolen, in the case that response might put them in any kind of trouble, specifically about that. So think about if you're doing a study about workplace relationships and they say like, oh, my boss sucks and is a terrible boss and they never listen to me and I feel discriminated, and for some reason that gets reported back to their job and they fire that person. So you don't want that to happen. You want to ensure a safe space for people to talk about what you're going to ask them. And as a researcher, that's your job. Like you have to make that effort to protect the people that agree to work with you. And the next section talks about the compensation. So also the Belmont report and IRB talks about all the time that as you are gaining knowledge and probably an extra salary as a researcher, the people that gets involved in your research will need to be compensated in some way. So for example, what we do, and generally the rule for these things is what's the hourly salary, basic salary in the place that you're going to conduct the research. So for example, what's the hourly minimum in Ecuador? How much it will be? Probably, I think it's $8 to $10, depending on what the person does. Because, for example, if you're like a faculty member, you're not in like a minimum wage, you're pretty much in other salary. So you will need to compensate that person for an hour of their time regarding the scale of salary they have. If you're compensating, for example, in states, the hourly minimum wage is $15 in the state of California, but we usually go a little bit higher so people is interested in participating. We don't give them money, we give them gift cards. So for example, we give them a $20 Visa gift card so they can spend it in any way or pay debt with it. Here in Ecuador, we have done the same. For example, in biosciences department, we used to buy gift cards from Supermaxi that they can use even in like Fibeca or Sucasa or like Gran Aquí or Titan or anything like that to buy food or anything in specific ways. But the law of the University of Cuenca does not allow us to give them money. We have to give them these specific things. Also in California, there's no law. If you want, you can pay them like in cash or make a wire transfer to them. But people usually pay everything with cards. So you can give them like a Visa MasterCard with $20 and they can use that money in the best way they want to do it. I usually prefer, as a floor, give participants $20 because it's not too much, but it's not nothing, you know? It can contribute to something, and it depends the number of times I'm gonna need that person. So if I'm doing one workshop, $20 is okay if they're just logging on Zoom. But if I'm asking them to come to a specific location, I have to think about they have to spend in gas, or they have to spend in a bus, or like a taxi, Uber, whatever, to get to that place. So at least I wanna compensate that too. So it would be that 25. If I need them 4 times, I will give them $100 and I will pay them at the end of the study. So do you see the difference? Any questions about compensations? So let's think about your thesis. For example, you're probably interviewing a couple people. As a student, usually you don't have resources or a grant to pull out those resources. That's okay in your case as an undergrad. However, as a graduate student, sometimes you want to run a grant for your master's thesis or for your PhD dissertation, and you might need like at least a token of appreciation. When I was a PhD student working on my dissertation, I got Starbucks gift cards like of $25 for my interviewees that were like, professors or researchers. That was something I could afford under my grant, but also something that's useful for them. So it doesn't matter the person is not like, you're not like rich or anything, but at least something that compensates the time they devote for your research. What is not okay is when you're a professional researcher and don't give people anything. That's very unethical and very unfair. That's, for example, the case that Angie was telling us about trans people. You at least can like pay something to them, for their time. It would be good. So next sections of here, you will have to say information who they can contact if they have questions. So it could be the PI or could be the co-PI, and you have to make a section when you say, I agree to join this study, and the signature of the person, their full name and the date. And you will also need to sign up. And the ethical thing to do is to make a copy or like scan PDF of this, send them the copy, and you keep one copy. Usually IRB requests that you ask people to show any proof of participation to get the compensation. Any questions regarding informed consent? Stephanie.
I'm sorry, about compensation, just in our case, we can say that we are going to give their, I don't know, something special that is not money, right? Because we are not able to give money to different people who are going to like to participate, to be a participant, or we can also give money to them.
You can definitely if you have the grant or any resources to fund that. If you're like an undergrad student, that's not expected from you. However, if you're a professional researcher, as I said, you can either pay them or give them a gift card that represents that. Similar things you can combine. For example, if you do a focus group, you might have also food at the place where you are going to do the focus group, and plus you have make them like give them an extra compensation, a gift card or something like that, but you can give them money too. That's not a problem.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. What usually the rule is not give too much in a way that you're gonna have like the person's gonna feel biased to say yes to everything or like agree everything to you. No problem, Martina. Any other questions? No? Okay. So in this last section of the class, we're gonna see a little bit of how to make engaging and more practical research. So for example, as in my study I was showing you, there's many ways to conduct participatory workshops or arts-based uh, tools and so. Ideally, these things are better in person. However, there can be limitations. For example, here in Ecuador, how many times we have like energy cuts or we have safety issues. So moving, for example, to Zoom can be more effective in terms of having the recorded data if you have a low budget, but also to make people more comfortable in a specific setting. So in my own experience, where you are talking about sensitive topics, people will participate, but will feel a little bit of shame going in person and meeting face to face another victim of sexual violence, for example. So Zoom can be really comfortable for that, but also will be more helpful for them to be in their comfortable space and not having to go to a place to talk about something already uncomfortable for them. So for example, there's this tool called Mentimeter. I don't know if you guys have used Mentimeter before. Has any of you have used Mentimeter?
Yes.
Good. What's your experience with it, Stephanie?
Well, I usually have presentations there. Also, well, I'm like a teacher well, I have a class. So when I want that my students participate, I do this part, like questions or different things.
Yeah.
From that responses, I used to give a feedback.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very useful for teaching or also for like collaborative work online or anything like that. So it's such a useful tool. Yes, the pandemic was the hype of it, but since then, Mentimeter has very new, and each time they improve even more. So for example, I'm gonna show you, you can open an account on mentimeter.com and you're gonna have a tutorial of how to open the account and create an account for yourself also um, on this in the Google Classroom. So for example, I'm gonna show you the same presentation for you to interact a little bit with it. So have you heard about plant-based meat? So you can, what you will use is go to menti.com and use the code, this code here, to copy the voting link. However, to make this even more engaging, Mentimeter offers you an option where you can go to interactivity and add QR codes so people will only pull out their phones in front of the camera. So for example, in this case, you can pull out your phone and scan and respond to this survey. So try it right now with your phone. Have you heard about plant-based meats and how? Like some people through friends, others through social media. Great, others through social media, and you will see live, right, when you're discussing, and I won't know who responded to each one. So people, it's free, even they're talking face to face with you, they're free to say whatever they feel about. I won't know, I only know like there's 3 people that listen about social media, but I only know that there's other 3 through different sources. So for example, if we go to this next question, it would be, have you tried meat analogs? If yes or no. First, let's go with yes and no. Or plant-based meats. 3 people have tried and 1 no. Let's go to the next one. What can motivate you to try meat analogs? Is it because it is a healthy option? Because it has an affordable price? Is it because of taste? Is it good for the environment? Or so, okay, we have divided opinions, but we have 1-1-1. Great. Let's go to the next one. Do you like the taste of meat analogs? Yes or no? Or some are good and some not. Right. So we're divided, right? Like it's clear, some people like it, some people hate it, but yeah. Let's go to the next. So which brand is the best in terms of taste, for example? Do you remember the taste of any plant-based meat? And you can write the name of the brand. Which brand is the best in terms of taste? So this type of a slide, for example, will make a word cloud. You can scan it. Beyond Meat. And any other probably that you know. Cordon Green. Okay, so what's the characteristic of a word cloud? The one that repeats the most will become bigger and bigger. Let's go to the next one. Would you be interested in tasting meat analogs as part of your meals? Yes. So 1%, 1 no, 2 yes, 1 no, more yes. Great. So we have like more openness. And then you can ask a question like, for example, okay, why you will be open and interested? What it makes you interested about? And people will respond something like, oh yeah, I heard it's good for the environment and probably it's more affordable and will probably be good for my health in the long term or things like that. You can make notes about that. Do you know any product or brand? What do you think about the brand? So which is probably a product that you have heard. You can say like burgers from Beyond Meat or so. And this would be pretty much like making a post-it, the participatory diagram in which people say like, I like burgers from Beyond Meat, but I like the chicken from Cordon Bleu or things like that. So you can scan it in the QR code as well. And what do you think about that specific brand? It's expensive, but it's tasty. And it will come in one post-it. It will look like post-it notes. Cordon bleu sausage, tasty but expensive. Okay. Great. So this would be moving around probably like this and have all the answers. Let's say like Beyond Meat has really good options for burgers and is in some restaurants in Cuenca. Great. No, not know any brand until today, only few bad experiences. Okay. And then you will ask, for example, what was your bad experience? Oh, like it was like something like a patty and a breakfast. It was not really great combination with my eggs or things like that. Okay. What do you think about plant-based proteins and the claims of food labels? So what are the ideas? So for example, say like, oh, clean label is like somebody has no transgenics, everything is organic or things like that. It's like, oh, it's believable. I don't believe it's actually clean or things like that. So this is just an example of how you can use Mentimeter. So for example, you can develop, let me go back. And once you create your account, you will see something like this. And you will say, for example, I want to make a quiz, such as Angie was telling us for schools, for example, or you want to import a presentation you already have, or you want to make a survey. Or also you can use AI to help you guide you do this specific things. So let's say we want to make a new Menti in general terms. And Menti will give you pretty much options to start from templates. So you can explore an option, let's say a staff meeting, or you want to make a collective reflection with your participants in the research. You want to make a student check-in to see how things are advancing in the course. You want to make a staff training for people in your office or things like that. And there's other categories, but let's stick with something broader so you can also have time to explore. So when you create a new slide, there's many options you can use. So multiple choice will give the person 3 or 4 options to vote. Open-ended will be pretty much ideas that people can respond to a question. Ranking instead is like a Likert scale. So like you can ask them, how likely are you try this product? And the one that repeats the most will be the first, for example, it's like a voting poll. The word cloud instead is also what we have done, like, right, like people will go and like start saying words that come into their mind specifically to talk about something. And it will look exactly like this. You can also make scales to make people vote, like rank, a grade, how good something is. Also, you can make 100 points to grade something, or you can make a quick form or 2x2 grade. So this is like kind of like a statistical, but will also allow. This is also a good option for mapping. So let's say you want to make a pin on a map, and you will add the map of Cuenca, for example. Or you will say pin or image, and I want to say places where you hang out on the weekends or things like that. So those are the options. So let's go back to my presentation to see how you can also modify this. So what I do usually, let's say we finish our focus group or our participatory session, and these are the results. So what I do is usually go to view results, and it will throw me out all the results of the responses of the people, of how many options they have. So it will be like a breakdown in percentages and so. And what I can do is download this in a PDF so I can have all the stats of my first focus group, for example. And you will add this to the transcript that you're gonna code. In the upcoming weeks, we're gonna code some data so you have some ideas about how to analyze qualitative data. So this pretty much is every response we got on this first workshop, right? And this will help you out to visualize something that sometimes is just not very actually visual for anybody. It's just graphics or paperwork that sometimes it gets lost when you're doing research. So you can also adapt Mentimeter to make it in person and have like a presentation and a projector and show them this and make them respond. So people that can respond whatever they want if they don't want to say it out loud, and engagement will be better. And people that actually want to comment, they will, but you will have responses from everybody no matter what. So this is very valuable of the presentation. Okay? So for example, let's say I realize about my questions that this is kind of weird. So for example, when I label this out, so like which is the best brand in terms of taste, and I can modify it. So where you will write the question is in question, and the label here will be any indication you want to add. So you can add here is like think about your last experiences with plant-based meats. You can also add images. So for example, if I have a picture here of something that can be helpful to people to remind, I can put it and it will be in the slide as well as the projection. So it's very versatile. You can put them color or add them like a background or change the layouts as you want. But there are also themes such as color, and you can like personalize, like customize all of this. So let's say we want to stay with this really cool green color. So how you will share this, I highly recommend going to the menu on your right and you will say interactability. So you will say like response settings, how many times people can put up an idea. If you want them just once, you will put 1 here. But also if you want to add the instructions bar, which is they can use either menti.com in the browser of the phone or the QR code. So it automatically creates a QR code. You don't have to create that in another platform and plug it in here. Any questions? There's many options out there. It's not just Mentimeter available. I highly recommend to use also Kahoot, especially if you want kind of to make a game or make them play. It will be highly more engaging, especially for children, because you can lay them out and it has music or things like that. But examples, for example, for adults, Mentimeter works better because they usually have, you know, like a smartphone or something like that. It always needs internet and connection. Some Mentimeters allow, and there's another option that it's called Poll Everywhere that works through SMS. So if you're doing something with a vulnerable population that doesn't have a smartphone, but they have SMS service, you can just send them a link and they will be able to respond through SMS. The application's called Poll Everywhere. I will write it here in the chat. Any questions? Okay, so this week you have 2 assignments. Are going to be drafting your informed consent according to your study with people. And that's going to be due next week, next Tuesday. And also you will have to play around a Mentimeter or like a Kahoot or Poll Everywhere, or even you can use PowerPoint to show illicit information you want to show. This always makes these participatory sessions or workshops or focus group or interviews more engaging, especially if you're going to talk something that people might be uncomfortable saying it, and just eliciting the ideas and asking broader questions about how that happened, or do a follow-up question from the responses, but also have that in a file later for your coding and analysis. Hopefully that will be useful for your thesis as well. If you have to do focus group or talk to people, that can help you out with too. Okay, I'm gonna stop recording.